Hello and welcome to the YouTube podcast series of Cities ABC with Open Business Council, Fashion ABC and Dinner Squadra. I'm Hilton Supra, the Vice Chairman of Studium Group, and I'm pleased to conduct this interview today with Jesse Brown, CEO of Himalaya Exchange, where we interview people who are changing the world, people that are inspiring us with their achievements and creativity, acumen with the use of technology. In previous interviews, Dinner Squadra and I have interviewed over 200 amazing people and achieved more than 10 million views on YouTube. This interview series on Cities ABC is in partnership with our platforms openbusinesscouncil.org and fashionabc.org, all fourth industrial revolution based platforms, utilizing technologies which employ the use of truth and trust through blockchain and the deployment of data analytics, AI, and machine learning. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Jesse Brown, the CEO of Himalaya Exchange.
Thank you. Thank you, Hilton.
Good to speak to you in Florida.
Yes. Great to speak to you as well.
Indeed. So basically, Jesse is the world's, at Himalayan Exchange, it's the first true crypto ecosystem with a mission to give power back to the consumers and redefine currency. And you're very accomplished as a FinTech leader and an executive with extensive experience driving innovative crypto infrastructure solutions, developing founding teams, establishing strategic partnerships, and building compelling products. And you've worked with brands like Ford Motor Company, Microsoft, LedgerScore, DTC, and you bring yourself with decades of experience working in cloud, mobile, enterprise solutions, architecture, etc. You've also looked at complex systems, cybersecurity, distributed ledger technologies, and really honed your skills whilst you've been based down there in Florida. So tell me, Jesse, you in Florida, so where does Jesse come from?
Well, Jesse was born in Cape Cod, Mass, a town called Barnstable. Yes, I'm a third generation Cape Codder, believe it or not, and that's quite a feat in its own. Yes. But I certainly thank you so much for that introduction. I grew up on the Cape. My family's been there for a long time, as a lot of northern New Englanders do. I migrated to Florida later on in my life, and then now I've making the move all the way to the Caribbean as well. So brilliant. A lot of movement up and down the East Coast.
Exactly, I can see that. But you went to university in Florida as well, I see.
Yes, actually, I went to the College of St. Rose in Albany, New York. Okay. Was where I attended college. I was on the Software Engineering Advisory Board at Florida Gulf Coast University. And that's actually where I first started learning about blockchain and understanding it. At that time, I was hiring graduates. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry. We were looking at analyzing supply chain data and metrics around that, from the manufacturer to the distributor, right down to the zip code level post office. So we were getting graduates at that time that were looking into mining. They were mining Bitcoin, they were mining Litecoin. So some of those conversations came up in the office, and then there was kind of the understanding of the blockchain technology, distributed ledger, that kind of worked well with supply chain data as well. A little too early then to get a lot of people involved in it, but certainly opened my eyes to the opportunities.
That's very interesting. When you were at school, when you were growing up in Cape Cod, were you involved in some form of technology and programming or anything like that?
No, it was probably later on in college that I really started to get, really involved in computers. I've always had some skills in math and good understanding of the English language. And I think both those kind of came together at the right time to kind of forge my career path.
Indeed, which took you to to work with companies like Microsoft at Azure as an advisor to them. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, that was back in the days of Microsoft confidential compute, right? So there's these really cool things called hardware enclaves, right? Where you can store data, protect data. I was really interested in that at the time. So I worked at an advisory level with them. We were working with some big data then at Data Blockchain. So it seemed like a good fit. Super great way to protect data. Keep it away. Keep it more secure.
Yeah. And I mean, prior to that, you were at Ford Motor Company, where you worked and looked at proof of concept.
Yes. That was quite. Yes, that was quite exciting, actually. This was the early days of blockchain, and I had a consulting job there. I was their first blockchain consultant. So I went there and I worked with, kind of the innovation team, and it was outstanding for me. I really loved it because there was a lot of work with siloed databases, a lot of, things that were interesting use cases for blockchain, title registration, paying as you travel down the highway. We really were looking at a lot of different things at the time. And it was the first time I was really taking kind of this knowledge I'd gained in blockchain and putting it to use, in the institutional space.
Yeah. But both of those are two mega companies. To the best of your knowledge, how have they adopted all the work that you've put in terms of, is it mainstream or is it still a side project?
No, I was early on in a lot of these things. They were just dabbling. It was really hard to get some of these technologies across the line early on with some of the bigger companies. I mean, there was the innovation and proof of concept level still at the time for a lot of them, but the real understanding and the real advocates were still kind of at the developer architect level at that time. It never really got past the lead stakeholders in a lot of those companies when I was there, which was fine. I mean, for me, it was interesting because early on, I had, when I went out on my own to, get involved in blockchain and make a commitment to crypto, I posted my CV at that time. I believe it was 2016 or so. I had been learning about Corda on Slack and understanding what they were doing, and Hearn and Brown there are just brilliant guys. And I learned so much from them. And then I started thinking about things more on Ethereum and looking into kind of all these. And I post a resume out into, some of the bigger sites, and, by golly, and I think it was a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, 6 or 7 of the top Forbes 20 companies in the world called me in my house in Florida.
Okay. Unfortunate.
Which was kind of amazing at the time. I was like, wow, I guess I really know something now.
Yeah. But it's first mover advantage, number one.
It is, and there was calculated risk. I left a very high-paying cush job in Naples, Florida, moving around pharmaceutical data. You know, everyone was driving Bentleys. It would have been very easy to stop right there.
Absolutely. No, and then you moved on and started working much more in terms of this. You became CTO of Data Blockchain.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of before the 2018 crypto winter. It was an ICO more around marketing data. Typically big sets of data are only accessible, right, by these big companies like Ford Motor Credit and, you know, big institutional companies like that. And it's very cost prohibitive for the small mom and pop to get their hands on the data that's regional to them, that has value to them. So our idea, and that's where these enclaves came on and everything, you know, kind of sharing this data with you know, larger institutions at the time. It just kind of made sense because we broke it up where you could buy little bits of data, right? That were just prevalent to what you wanted, as you know, a gym in Deerfield Beach.
Okay,
right?
you could segment it. I could understand.
Yes, yes. So you're only, so the big data distributor, they're more comfortable because they're only selling this little bit. They're not giving their whole huge data set to anyone. They're getting paid right away, which is much better because they were delayed like 60, 90 days, typically, the way that market works. And then little mom and pop shop can spend a few $100 and get the data they want that works for them. So it's a great concept. You know, we were, I think, the second or third ranked ICO across all the platforms back then, and everything had big social channels and all that. But the crypto winter kind of put a stop to a lot of that, and there was you know, there was a pullback in the market at the time.
I mean, as an architect, in terms of, I'm talking about data, obviously everybody goes down the sort of the SQL database route. You know, you worked with Microsoft and Zero, etc. Did you ever work with looking at the concept of, you know, looking at data lakes and things like that?
Oh yes, yes, of course, yeah,
right.
Yes. I mean, those are all things that you know, certainly you would integrate, you know, eventually.
Yes, because I mean, I don't hear much about it. You know, everybody still talks about, you know, the traditional way of doing things, but using this type of architecture today.
Yeah, we're looking at data lakes right now with Himalaya.
It's very relevant now.
Yeah,
because you got the ability to use AI to go out.
Right. You know, having insight and intelligence like that, and then to build those models, you know, that's what's going to create efficiency across, you know, all these different frameworks and, you know, all these different environments.
Indeed. And which leads us to what prompted you to get involved in 2020 with the Himalaya Exchange. Tell me how that whole journey started, because this is very exciting.
Well, it was, I was, you know, the UBO, William J, reached out to me. You know, he's, you know, such a big figure in Hong Kong and Asia, you know, real prominent banker in the space. Has done hundreds of IPOs, and you know, he wanted to build something that, you know, made a lot of sense to me at the time. You know, more of an ecosystem. You know, certainly had his brand going for it. You know, that investment capital that follows someone of that stature, you know, certainly helps any launch. I knew that we would be very well funded, which was important to me too. I knew that we would try to scale and move as quickly as we could in a evolving, you know, regulatory, very fluid compliance environments that we're in. So all those things kind of made sense to me. It sounded like you know, a good opportunity at the time, and it sounded like I was going to be able to craft a lot of things, which is important to me as kind of, you know, coming from the tech background. And I had worked on the Whitney project in a consultant role for Infosys then as well. And I had just done a lot of work with tokenizing private assets. And that was based on Ethereum too at that time. So my head was kind of into the institutional side, so it just kind of seemed like the right opportunity, was presented to me.
Because automatically when people see the word Himalaya, they think of the Indian subcontinent. They're thinking of the Himalayas. What's the link between Himalayas and Himalaya Exchange?
Well, a large amount of our audience currently and up to this time is from the Asia Pac region, and we're prominently a Mandarin speaking community as well as English. So we have customer service in both languages, 24/7 and things like that. So the idea was, to reach that target audience, because obviously that's where our strengths lied at the time.
So when you talk about an ecosystem, the center of gravity of that ecosystem from a regulatory perspective is where?
Well, we're domiciled in the BVI, Himalaya coin, the Himalaya dollar, and the Himalaya Exchange, and also Himalaya Pay. But we're pretty global too. We're licensed in Australia. We're in the process of acquiring licenses and other spots around the world with the regulatory bodies. We're also acquiring companies too. So in Japan, we're acquiring another exchange. So we're slowly kind of building out step by step. We're also buying some banks, because as you probably know, connecting crypto with fiat is a very difficult thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the work that you did with the DTCC.
Yeah, it does. And I've been on both sides of this. I've been around in 2017 when, there wasn't really any regulatory oversight at all. I've worked on the institutional side, even before crypto was really, in everyone's mind, kind of in a blockchain capacity. So I understand, these markets. And I just think that, over time, eventually regulation and compliance will be at a point where most businesses in most countries can participate.
Yeah. So the Himalayan Exchange, is it a centralized exchange, or is it a...
Yes. We have an army of compliance teams and attorneys and lawyers that are constantly looking at, each area where we do business. So, you do go through a KYC process. We do customer due diligence as well. There's a, I would say that we're probably one of the more robust platforms to get on, and sometimes that creates a little bit of friction with users, but it separates us in a lot of ways from a regulatory perspective, because what we're doing now, we want to be very compliant, so that as we're getting into these other areas, we're establishing ourselves as having these policies and systems in place to meet AML and KYC requirements.
So I mean, apart from AML and KYC, what challenges does Himalaya Exchange address with your products and your services?
Well, I think what we address more than anything is wealth preservation in a lot of these areas, right? Because, as you well know, Hilton, the U.S. government printed quite a lot of money in the last couple of years, right?
Yes.
So that, as that's created so much demand that there was certainly a time where that's going to start to come back, which is what we're seeing. And so these developing countries, right, their fiats really suffer during this. And every downturn we've seen, we see this organic growth for crypto, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of that goes on right now, where the wealth preservation from a failing fiat is the real incentive to get a lot of people. And I think our platform solves that problem, number one. And then just the Himalaya dollar, right? We've always been 100% cash reserves. We've never over collateralized or put that money to work anywhere else. Every Himalaya dollar has a dollar in the bank, and we use PricewaterhouseCoopers for auditing. We working with Armanino for stablecoin auditing. So we're doing all the things. We're actually moving to what's called real-time attestation, which is a very cool technology where Himalaya dollar holders or Himalaya coin holders will be able to see in real time the reserves, right, that we have and how many coins are in distribution, and see that in real time. So that's something that you really can't even do in traditional finance. So there's a lot of ways we're making things more transparent, I think, and working towards that. So I think those are reasons that, we've kind of done well in this downturn as opposed to everyone else. I think, our strategies and our methodologies for slowly, establishing our footprint, on very solid regulatory ground, I think it's working well now. I think we're getting traction with it.
I mean, in terms of your clients who are on the different exchanges, obviously they are exchanging crypto, Bitcoin or Ether for your Himalayan coin, which is a stable coin, as you say, 100% backed by the dollar.
Yes, the Himalayan dollar, yes.
Yeah, they're now holding your stable coin. What can they do with that?
Well, they can buy a classic Ferrari race car for $5 million on Sotheby's. We've auctioned 2 of those and been the transaction, the transaction wallet and the transaction coin for that. So we're also building out a merchant portal where we're, lining up bigger brands in around the globe to accept the Himalaya coin. We're looking at doing some things as well with other exchanges, so that we're going to start to, have Himalaya Exchange in other areas of the world where maybe we can't be right now.
And so the link between the exchange and the marketplace, as you describe it, you're building an Amazon or an Amazon within your ecosystem.
Yeah,
which is where you productize.
I think Amazon may be a little more of a stretch. I'm not sure we get involved in everything. Yeah. But I think that we pick and choose our categories and our jurisdictions. And kind of proceed cautiously that way as well. Yes. But, obviously, as we start to scale that, it gives us the ability to have a coin that people use. It has a real utility to them. They can spend it at places. So it's, we have the Himalaya Pay too, which is our wallet. So it's very easy to kind of move that money around on our platform. Everyone's whitelisted, so it's a very secure environment. And once again, that kind of goes to this slow, steady growth that we've been on, is security. I mean, we're a highly targeted site, and I'm sure security is going to even give me a hard time about mentioning how much we're targeted. But that is certainly something that is at front and center is protecting assets and protecting investor coins.
By creating this ecosystem, which blockchain protocol are you using across the ecosystem?
Well, we actually use a hybrid model. Our permission chain is Quorum, and we have our auditing. That's kind of where we do all of our heavy lifting, and so that's on top of Ethereum. But we're integrated with some of the bigger players in the space. BitGo handles our security. We have Jumio that does part of our KYC, even though we have a large questionnaire that qualifies investors as well immediately, so that we get an idea of exactly where they're coming from, how they've earned their funds, things like that. Proof of address is another big thing all the governments are looking for now. We're building out our own KYC platforms. I've kind of been involved in a lot of that work too, because really no one size fits all with these. As much as it's great to have, you can plug in something and that's all you'll need for compliance. I don't really see that as the case now, because things are just so fluid, and you need to have these internal controls. We have transaction monitoring teams, as well as a lot of robust software that we use there. So it's good to understand, daily reconciliations and, where the trades are happening at, all those are things that we monitor, no different than a real-time equities exchange.
No, this is very interesting. No, but the thing is, in terms of the looking at, you say you're sitting on top of Ethereum, how do you deal with the gas fees, which are, as you know, becoming an issue for a lot of people in terms of transaction costs?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we do most of the heavy lifting on Quorum. Yeah. The gas fees are, they're always a problem on Ethereum when things are really crazy. Now it's cheaper than 2 years. The NFT market, I think, really drove the cost. But yeah, you need a Polygon, or you need something where you're, putting on, you can't record every activity, every transaction on a public chain, obviously. So that's where these, layer 2 protocols, or, something like Quorum makes sense, because Quorum makes sense for us because, we're very cognitive of who has our coin and where our coin could possibly be at all times, because we don't want anyone in any jurisdictions possessing our coin. That's the big things that the regulators want to look at now too. So we have controls with that through the 1404 protocol that help us in the case where we may have to freeze an asset or claw back something.
Okay. Because that's always the case. You need to have check, even with that level of transparency, there's always mistakes, there's always things going on.
Yeah, that's back to, that's another thing, that once the regulators really understand the capabilities of the technology, then they'll understand that, this is really a more automated process for finance. It is. AI and blockchain, it's kind of
how much of your right? How much of your ecosystem is effectively a DeFi ecosystem, decentralized ecosystem?
None currently, but not to say that we're not looking at it or interested into it. I personally think Uniswap's held up pretty well. I know that they had a problem with a phishing attack and their internal token recently, but to be honest, phishing is what's going to get you, right? It's not so much, attacking your environments. It's more getting to your staff or to people, your consultants, or some way where you can get, a phishing attack will start to get place, and then, slowly take over, and it can be hidden for months and months. and people are acquiring that type of data and all. So, you know, I guess to the bigger point, I think DeFi did very well. I think most of the problem was centralized finance acting as DeFi.
Okay. Yes, I can understand that.
Yes.
Look, but tell me, in terms of the, you know, we talked a bit about, you know, you would look at DeFi, but what other things would you look at as an exchange and an ecosystem in particular going forward?
Well, I mean, for our exchange, you know, we would be looking at what I talked about before, you know, and what I feel is kind of the next phase of crypto, and that's asset-backed cryptocurrencies, right? Cryptocurrencies that have value behind them, you know, whether it be commercial paper or US Treasury, you know, something that has value to it, right? Or a company that's reporting earnings and the coin represents equity share, like a common equity, right? That's, I think, where the industry is going to head. And then I think from all the rubble of the 4,000 or 5,000 coins out there, that, you know, a couple of few hundred or so will, you know, start to get the lion's share of the, you know, the market at that time. And I think we kind of move on from there, where DeFi is coexisting with institutional, you know, and there's certain rails that make that happen.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're describing here is obviously using what I call a fungible,
yes,
a coin or fungible token.
Yes.
But you did mention earlier on NFTs, which is a non-fungible token.
Yes.
I'm using the full, I'm using in this case the full word, because some people will be seeing.
No, I understood. Non-fungible tokens. So that just that represents, you know, more an item, right, or possession of
or something that's unique to an individual, or unique asset, or whatever, like your own.
And I think there are tremendous use cases for that, right, that no one really talks about now. And say like Uniswap or Curve, right? They have what are called concentration pools, right? So if we took the if we took say Bitcoin, and then we took a stable coin, right? Say the Himalaya dollar, right? And we create this liquidity pair with those. What we're essentially doing is we're creating an NFT, right? That has two wallets in it. Wallet 0, which has a certain amount of Bitcoin, and then wallet 1, which has a certain amount of HTO. When they start, they're normally going to be equal amounts, but then they trade against each other in decentralized finance. So use cases like that for NFTs is where it'll start to make more sense for me, I think.
No, that's very interesting. In terms of, you know, we're moving in terms of the concepts of, you know, what I call good utility coming from the technology of tokenization. Yes. But of course, now I mentioned in the beginning in the introduction, we talked about the fourth industrial revolution in terms of, say, sort of a linear projection of where we are been in the past and where we are today, where we are the product, the data that's collected on us is the product. Is there anything in the way that Himalaya are building out the stablecoin and all your products that's going to put the individual at the center, enabled by technology?
I think there is. Right. Yeah. And we're a ways away from it, because we're still kind of mastering the whole, you know, regulators and countries are used to doing certain things certain ways, right? So to really comply, you're going to use a technology that they're comfortable with, right? And not something that's out of place. But the ION network is just fascinating to me, right? The decentralized ID built on Bitcoin blockchain, and me holding all my data, right? Myself managing it. I'm not really holding it. A third-party oracle is, right? A verified, trusted third-party oracle is handling that data. And I'm telling that data where I want it to go and for how long. And then I can even pull it back. I can pull back my certificate. I can pull back things if I want to. So once I begin to control my own personal data and things I need to verify that I am who I am on certain platforms, then I think DeFi and traditional finance can really close the gap, because now I can satisfy the regulator by giving him information that I know that he's going to want to see. And then even for an exchange, do I really want to have my data in other people's possession where they're the ones entrusted to protect that data? That's always risky to me. So I'm from the DeFi side originally. Centralized finance is something I'm working in, but in the long run, I'd like to make it all work where I can still have my privacy. There can be transparent audit trail to my transactions. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But I don't want you to hold all my personal data all the time. And so I think that eventually that starts to get more and more involved, and we get away from Web 2 and we start to get into this world where, you're controlling your assets that, let's face it, these assets are worth a lot of money. Right? There's a lot of value to my data. Yep. So why do I want to let others hold it and profit from it? Right?
Exactly. So we're segueing into something which is what is known as Web3 and the metaverse, and identity and data is very, very important, because as you start migrating as a digital avatar of yourself in Web3 in the metaverse, many issues start coming in terms of, am I that person who's been represented by that avatar? How can another avatar trust my avatar? So how does technology enable me to, number one, protect my data, and number two, protect me from other nefarious actors who've made clones of themselves?
Yeah, that's a question for smarter people than me, probably. I would assume that it kind of starts at, owning this data yourself. Yeah. But then I don't know, maybe there needs to be ID monitoring, like there's transaction monitoring, or maybe you can start to, if your avatar's in one space, maybe it can't be in another space at another time. I mean, maybe there's certain ways you could map your ID to certain metaverses. I mean, I'm just really saying this all off the top of my head, but those would be the first things, if I was sitting in a room, I'd shout out like I just did.
Absolutely. No, that's very, very interesting. I like being a little bit pokey and to say, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of some things. I mean, this ID thing is very important to me. I've been the victim of a SIM card hack twice. Right? Someone has actually impersonated me in an AT&T store in Indiana back in 2017. Because everyone thinks you're holding all your coins and you got your seed information on your wallet or something, right? So the SIM card hack has been going on for a long time, but the social engineering behind it is so good that it still works and it's still very effective. No court has ever ruled against a telecom that I know of because of it. But people get your SIM card and then they start to, two-factor authorization, right? Does that really work? If you've stolen my SIM card, it doesn't. And so you wake up and you can't access your, you can't access your email, or something's gone on. So that happened one time to me. I went in and at the store, the managers told me, no one's going to be able to do this again to you, right? You're going to have to come into the store for us to redo your SIM card. Well, lo and behold, 7 or 8 months later, it tends to happen on every project, right? So lo and behold, someone gets it, and they just came up with the story, and they got it from a contractor that works for the telecom, and so they come up with this phishing story. They get your stuff, and then they get in. But if that's all it takes for you, people have lost hundreds of millions of crypto through this hack.
It has. I mean, there's some very well-known cases, as both you and I know. Some of the veterans of the industry have been done for millions. So.
Yeah. So I mean, all this stuff matters. Your reputational risk by building applications and things that aren't going to work or aren't going to hold up. That's important for your business, especially in this industry. I mean, you're going to get your nose bloodied every once in a while, but how you manage it and how you control it is the most important thing. And then just how you learn from others too. I mean, there's so many examples that, you just have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the dark web and things like that. And we do a lot of those things really well.
Yes. I mean, you've got a lot of dedication and passion to this industry, and, you always challenging the status quo in terms of looking at, I don't like the word disruptive because I think it's used too often. It's very negative. I want to be more creative.
Okay.
In my approach. Disruption will come from creativity.
It does. And I'm not sure. It's just challenging the status quo and trying to make things better, more efficient. Just, it's not like traditional finance is perfect. My gosh. I mean, you have to understand, I mean, Zoom video, right? The equity's down 80%. Some of the big tech companies are down 80%. That all comes from the, 20% of all the new dollars are out there in the last 2 years. That's going to generate these types of bubbles, and it's not fun when they burst.
Absolutely. They say, a lot of blood on the streets.
There is.
Yeah. In terms of
Indeed.
The Himalaya Exchange, and you've talked a lot about the ecosystem and what you're trying to achieve, and you're doing it in incremental steps. And you mentioned that you were acquiring exchanges and you were acquiring banks. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time as a company? What's the mission and your vision in terms of where you want to be in 5 years?
Well, we've already been pretty successful with our coin. From a market cap perspective, the Himalaya coin is one of the biggest market caps in the space right now. Yes. And the Himalaya dollar is growing well. And like I said, we've had cash reserves. So what we're really going to try to do now is build out this ecosystem. So if we could onboard, several of the larger brands around the world and start to make inroads with, vendors and, maybe credit card companies using our dollar, kind of like as a cash app, something like that, through our Himalaya app. The goal is to get the exchange to the point where, it's one of the larger exchanges, for volume and for pairs. But with that said, it's a slow, meticulous, arduous path, because, getting licensed takes time in each jurisdiction. And then, only at that point can you begin to market and begin to, get your brand out there. Mm-hmm. So if we had launched in 2017, it would have been much different, right? But now, we made the decision to make sure that we were, fully compliant and regulated wherever we did business. And that's the kind of the path that we have to take. So I would think in 5 years we would be past all that, and we'd be a top 5 or top 10 exchange.
But if you look at the end of the day, you're trying to reach out to effectively, people talk about the underbanked or the unbanked, and people who don't have access to financing trade. Where do you see the growth and development of the Himalaya coin in terms of dealing with farmers in Africa or traders in North Africa?
Yeah, that's basically our mission. Is we want financial freedom and the ability for people to own assets, control their own money as well. So that is really, I would say, an area where there's a lot of opportunity for us, even though we started a little late to get our footprint. And that's why I think our Asia Pac presence and everything that we're doing over there, that's quite a large market, the Mandarin market. Crypto is advanced, a lot more advanced in that area of the world. They're more used to using it. They're more used to holding it. So I think that that was a great place for us to start. But I think, as we make inroads in other places, that client, that unbanked, that person who has kind of been disenfranchised, gets the opportunity to hold these assets and to, participate in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So, when you last had a look at the Himalaya coin, what's your market cap about?
Well, there's 1 billion coins.
Yeah.
Yeah, in distribution. So our market cap, I believe the coin was trading around 32 today, 31.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of we've had quite a lot of volatility in the markets of the crypto more recently, driven by many things. How did your coin do in that difficult time?
It did very well. I mean, we were at 50 at one point, I think is our all-time high in the 50s. But when we launched in November, we launched at 10 cents. So obviously there's some pullback, but I would speak to all markets in general, relative to their pullback. I would say that ours is still, minimal compared to what everyone else is doing. And it's because there's this, demand for it there. It seems to be, there's a lot of social advocates and big communities behind us that, gobble up the price when it starts to get sold. That's what you want, right? You want buyers on the other end of that trade.
Yeah. So obviously people go on to your website, which is Himalaya.exchange, and they can download the app. We're still launching our iOS and Android app, but yes, you can just log on and then start the KYC process on the web app. Yeah, it's mobile friendly. It acts just like the iOS app. Yeah. Okay. But the iOS app is coming out. We've got quite a few releases coming up too. I think that's what's helped our price is we're actively building out new products. So we're getting ready to launch quite a few more pairs. As well as the ability to trade natively on your phone as well. That's very interesting. And what about the number of customers that you have? Is that public information?
Yeah, not really public information, but it's a growing amount. We're still haven't reached that point of scale that I would like, but a lot of it is regulatory. But we're constantly onboarding new customers in different parts of the world. That part's growing. It's just that your hands are kind of tied because it's hard to really market in different jurisdictions without everything in place, and these things seem to take time. What's kind of frustrating is that the things seem to move quickly and then not. There's a lot of talk, right? This bill, that bill, and you kind of get moving one way or the other. You start to think that, you make a comment in the stakeholder meeting or something, oh, this is good. No. And then it changes. So it's such a moving target too, that, you know, that part of it, you know, we certainly welcome clear and concise regulation. I know everyone says that, but we're paying armies of lawyers, so I would like to get it faster than anyone.
I can understand. And your community, how do people join your community and through your social media? So
yeah, I mean, you just go to Himalaya, you know, Himalaya Exchange on Discord. You know, we've got Twitter. We've got most of the social media set up. We're starting to grow more in that. I'm starting to get more active in that because actually, way most compliance works is social media is a place you can actually reach people as long as you're not selling them anything, yes. Right? So it's an active venue to kind of get, you know, people to understand who you are, what you do, what makes you different, you know, all those things. And we've been able to kind of create a good message around, you know, some of the things that have happened in the industry and how we've been somewhat immune to a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. This is very interesting in terms of, if you look at when people build our technology platforms, they spend all their money building technology, then they want to raise more money, and then they want to build a community. In your case, when you started, you had a community to start with, didn't you?
Well, we had a community of, we were well funded, right? Yes. But internally, so we had all the capital we needed internally to start, so that gave us a big advantage.
Yes.
Yeah. Our private placement sale was $100 million Himalaya dollar. So that was the one launch we did in the spring, and then we onboarded those customers, and those were the exchange customers when we launched the HCN coin in November.
Brilliant, thank you. So Jesse, thank you. We're coming to the top of the hour, and I wanted to thank you very much for your time and for some very interesting insights, in particular the Himalaya Exchange. Your journey here has been a very interesting one. You've contributed significantly to the evolution of our industry. And I thank you personally for that, because the work you did with Azure, DTCC, Ford Motor Company, all that little bit helps. It gets attention and gets things moving. And so I would personally thank you for all that effort.
Thank you so much. You know, small contributions, but, you know, someone starting to kick the can down the road is basically my analogy.
Absolutely. Jesse Brown, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much, Hilton. I enjoyed it.
Now, if you're interested in knowing more about citiesabc.com with Open Business Council and fashionabc.org, do go to our platforms, as well as you can find us in social media. You can find me on social media. You can DM me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So do go to other interviews as well that we have done on YouTube, and don't forget to like and comment. Thank you very much for your time and engaging with this interview on Cities ABC.